I met Emily when I was in college, and honestly, I thought I hit the jackpot. She was gorgeous, confident, and had that fiery attitude that made her seem untouchable. We started dating in our late teens, and everything seemed perfect, at least on the surface. She was the kind of girl who always kept you on your toes, a little bitchy but charming enough that you forgave her. I was completely smitten, and she knew it. We moved in together after a couple of years, and I thought we were headed for forever. Things started to change around the 6-month mark before I proposed. Small things, her phone buzzing more often, her being secretive about her texts, and her acting distant more than usual. I figured maybe it was just work stress or some random phase. I tried to ignore it, but deep down I sensed something was off. She'd always brush me off when I asked about her phone, saying I was being paranoid or that I was jealous. Yeah, I admit I was jealous, but I also felt something was wrong. Still, I kept pushing forward, thinking maybe I was overreacting. Then came the trip she took with her friends last month. She came back unusually flustered and defensive, snapping at me when I asked how it went. She said she was exhausted, no big deal. But I noticed she deleted a bunch of messages from her phone right after she got back. Her behavior was suddenly more aggressive, like she was trying to hide something. I brushed it off, telling myself I was overthinking, but the seeds of doubt were planted deep. I still loved her, and I didn't want to believe she would cheat on me, especially not just before I was planning to propose. I was ready to take that next step, and now I was haunted by this nagging feeling that everything was falling apart. One night, I decided to check her phone when she was in the shower. I know, it's invasive, but I was desperate for some clarity. That's when I found the messages. They weren't explicit at first glance, just little flirtatious comments, playful emojis, secretive texts that seemed innocent but in context felt like more. Then I saw the one that crushed me, a message from her to some guy named Mike. "Can't wait to see you tonight," followed by a heart emoji. I swear my stomach dropped. I read through more threads, and it was clear they'd been seeing each other, probably for weeks. The timing matched up with her trip, her secretive behavior, and her sudden attitude. She was cheating on me, probably right under my nose while I was planning our future. That moment was like a punch to the gut. I felt cold and angry and so betrayed I could barely breathe. I wanted to confront her immediately, but I also needed time to process what I just discovered. I felt like I didn't even know who she was anymore. How could she lie so easily, act like everything was fine, and then cheat on me like I was nothing? I had given her everything, my love, my trust, and she threw it all away. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? Why was I so blind? I kept replaying every moment, every small argument, every time she brushed me off. It all made sense now how distant she'd been. I was devastated, but deep down, a part of me felt furious. I wanted revenge, but I also just wanted the truth. I couldn't believe I was about to propose to a woman who'd been screwing around behind my back. It was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. The next few days were a whirlwind of emotion. I couldn't eat, sleep, or focus on anything else. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her smile, her laugh, but also that sneaky look she'd get when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was bleeding inside. I kept wondering how long she'd been doing this, how many times she'd lied to me about where she was or who she was with. It was like my entire world had been turned upside down overnight. I knew I had to confront her, but I didn't want to do it blindly. I needed a plan. I sat down with a pen and paper, trying to organize my thoughts. I knew she'd lie, spin stories, deny everything. She always did. Emily was good at lying, especially when she felt cornered. She could spin a web of bullshit so convincing that even I started to doubt myself sometimes. But I also knew her pattern. She hated being caught, hated admitting she was wrong, and loved to manipulate the situation to her advantage. That's why I decided I'd go in prepared, with proof and with a clear head. One evening I waited until she came home from work. When she walked through the door, I could see the smirk on her face, like she already knew she was in control. She tried to act normal, but I wasn't buying it. I pulled out her phone and laid the evidence on the table. "Who is Mike?" I asked calmly but firmly. Her face fluttered for a second, then she scoffed and rolled her eyes. "Oh, come on, that's just a stupid joke. You're overreacting as usual," she said, trying to brush it off. Her tone was bitchy, dismissive, but I pressed on. "That's not just a joke, Emily. I saw the messages. You've been lying to me. How long has this been going on? How many times have you fucked him?" Her eyes narrowed and she let out a bitter laugh. "You really think I'd cheat on you? You're so paranoid. You're always accusing me of stuff I haven't done. Maybe you're just insecure," she snapped. But I wasn't buying her bullshit anymore. I told her how I'd found other messages, how I'd read the conversations where she clearly was intimate with him, how her attitude changed after her trip. She looked furious, then flustered, then downright bitchy. "Oh, so now I'm a slut. Nice. You're really something," she spat. "Maybe I needed someone who actually cared about me, unlike you. I was bored. He's fun and he treats me like I deserve." That's when she started lying outright, telling me she was just texting him as a joke, that they had no affair, that I was just paranoid and jealous. But I knew better. I'd seen enough to know she was lying. Her words were a desperate attempt to save herself, but the truth was out. She'd been screwing around and she knew it. That night, I felt a mix of anger and heartbreak. How could she be so callous? How could she betray me like this right before I was about to propose? I'd never felt so betrayed, so humiliated. I told her I needed space, that I couldn't even look at her without feeling sick. She threw a fit, said I was overreacting, called me controlling, said I was insecure, but I knew the truth. I was hurt, furious, and feeling like I'd been played for a fool. I thought I knew her, but now I had no idea who she really was. The trust was shattered, and I didn't see how I could ever fix it. All I wanted was to get out of that apartment and figure out what to do next, because my mind was racing, and I knew this was only the beginning of something much darker. Over the next couple of days, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, and I kept replaying the whole scene in my head. The betrayal cut so deep I felt like I was drowning. I didn't even want to see her anymore, but I knew I had to face it. I had to figure out what I was going to do, whether to forgive her, fight for the marriage, or just cut my losses and walk away. One night, I decided I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. I needed to confront her again, this time with a clear plan. I wanted to hear her try to deny everything face to face, see if she'd slip up, or if she'd try to manipulate her way out of it. I was done being played like a fool, so I sat her down in our living room, kept my voice steady, but my eyes burned with anger. "Emily," I said, "I know about Mike. I saw the messages. That's not just some joke or innocent texting. You've been with him behind my back." Her face went pale for a second, but then she scoffed, her attitude flipping into that bitchy, dismissive tone she loved to use when she thought she was winning. "Oh, here we go again with your drama," she snapped. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill. We're just friends, and I was bored, so I texted him. Big deal. You're so insecure, it's pathetic." Her words stung more than I thought they would. I could feel my blood boiling, but I stayed calm. "No, Emily, you're lying. I've seen the texts. You're screwing him, aren't you?" I pushed, trying to keep my voice from cracking. She rolled her eyes and looked at me like I was the crazy one. "Whatever. You're just jealous because I don't want to be with a guy who's so controlling." She spat. "You're the one who's paranoid, not me. Maybe I deserve someone who actually cares about me and doesn't accuse me of cheating all the time." Her words were a slap in the face, meant to hurt, meant to justify her actions. I felt a rush of rage and sadness at the same time. How could she sit there and deny everything so casually? How could she lie so easily, like I was nothing? I told her I was done, that I couldn't stay in a relationship built on lies. She said I was overreacting, that I was crazy, and that she'd never cheat on me. She even tried to make me feel guilty, said I was ruining everything with my accusations. I wanted to believe she'd change, that maybe she'd see reason, but I knew she was lying. Deep down, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. The girl I loved, the girl I was about to marry, had been screwing around for weeks, maybe longer. I felt numb, angry, and crushed all at once. The trust was gone. I realized I couldn't fix this, not with her, not now. I needed to get out, to think, to breathe. The emotional wounds were too deep, and the betrayal had shattered everything I thought we had. I sat there, staring at her, knowing that my life was about to change forever, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was coming. The days that followed were the worst of my life. I couldn't get the image of her and Mike out of my head, how they'd been so casual about betraying me, like it was nothing. Every memory of us together now felt tainted, like I'd been living in a lie from the very beginning. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her bitchy, manipulative ways. I'd always known she was difficult, demanding, sarcastic, but I never thought she'd be capable of this level of betrayal. Honestly, I felt like I was walking around in a fog. My mind kept circling back to the fact that I was supposed to propose to her, to make a lifetime commitment, but she'd already been cheating on me. It was a punch to the gut every time I thought about it. I'd planned everything out, bought a ring, and now I couldn't believe. I was even considering going through with it. How could I marry someone who was capable of lying so easily? How could I trust her again? Those questions haunted me day and night. One evening, I finally decided I needed some clarity. I met up with my best friend, Jason, who's always been supportive, and I told him everything about the messages, how she'd lied, how I felt. Jason was furious for me, especially when I told him how she was up to her typical manipulative tactics. "Man, she's a bitch. No way you should stay with someone like that," he said, voice full of anger. "You deserve better. You gotta get rid of her for your own sanity." That's when I started planning my next move. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after what I'd found out. I also knew I couldn't just blow up everything without a plan. It had to be strategic, calculated. I had to make her hurt as much as she'd hurt me, and I wanted her to realize she'd lost something priceless. I decided I'd gather more evidence, confront her again, but this time with a purpose, something to really shake her up, to make her see the damage she'd done. Over the next few days, I set up a few hidden cameras around the apartment, not to spy on her all the time, but enough to catch her in the act if she slipped up again or if she brought Mike over. I also started digging through her social media, texts, and call logs to find more proof. It was a sick feeling, invading her privacy like that, but I felt like I had no choice. I needed to make her see that I was serious. I wasn't about to be played anymore. One night she came home unexpectedly early. I could hear her keys in the lock before she even entered the apartment. My heart started pounding. I was nervous, angry, and determined to finally get some answers. When she stepped inside, I was already waiting, holding the evidence in my hand. Her face twisted into a sneer when she saw what I had. She tried to deny, to dismiss everything, but I cut her off. I told her I'd had enough lies, enough betrayal. I told her I knew about Mike. I knew she'd been lying all along, and that it was over. Her reaction was priceless. Her bitchy attitude turned into cold rage. "You're crazy," she spat. "You're just jealous because I don't want your boring ass anymore." She tried to cry, to scream, to manipulate her way out of it, but I wasn't falling for her act. I told her I was done with her lies, that I was done with her. And that's when she exploded. She called me controlling, insecure, and said I was ruining everything because I was too jealous. She accused me of being paranoid and obsessed. All I could do was stand there, feeling a mixture of relief and heartbreak. I knew I'd made the right decision. I couldn't stay with someone who thought so little of me, who'd cheat and then lie about it. I looked her in the eye and told her it was over. I was leaving that night, and I never wanted to see her again. The pain was overwhelming, but I finally felt a sense of liberation. I was finally freeing myself from a toxic relationship that had turned into a nightmare. After I told her it was over, she didn't take it well. She started screaming, calling me all kinds of names: controlling, insecure, jealous, that sort of thing. But honestly, I didn't care. I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The house that once felt like a home now felt like a prison. I packed my things that night, trying to keep it together, but I was shaking inside. The girl I loved, the girl I was about to marry, had been screwing around behind my back for weeks, maybe longer. I kept thinking about all the plans we made, the future I envisioned, shattering in an instant. So I left that night, staying with a friend for a few days while I figured out my next move. I knew I couldn't stay in that apartment. Every corner reminded me of her, of what she'd done. It was a fresh start I desperately needed, even if it meant starting over from scratch emotionally. I didn't tell anyone about the full details at first. I just said I needed space and time to clear my head. But inside I was angry, Furious at her betrayal, furious at myself for not seeing it sooner. I felt like a fool for trusting her, like I'd been played from the beginning. During those few days, I kept replaying everything: her sneaky behavior, the secret messages, her lying. It was almost surreal how quickly everything had fallen apart. I was so blindsided I questioned whether I'd ever really known her at all. I also started thinking about revenge, not in some childish way, but more about making her feel the pain she'd inflicted on me. I wanted her to understand that she'd lost someone who truly cared, someone who loved her unconditionally. But at the same time, I knew I needed to focus on myself. That meant no contact, no trying to fix what was broken, just pure, cold distance. One thing I realized in all this is how manipulative she'd been. Her bitchy attitude, her constant lying, her dismissiveness, they all seemed to be her defense mechanisms. She never wanted to take responsibility. Instead, she blamed me or painted herself as the victim. That realization made me even more determined to get out of her web. I didn't want to be part of her game anymore. I also knew I'd have to let go of any hope of reconciliation, at least for now. Trust was gone, and I couldn't see a way back from this kind of betrayal. While I was staying with my friend, I started to think about what revenge really meant in this situation. I'm not talking about petty stuff. I mean, making her feel the same pain she made me feel, in a way that would teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. I had accumulated some evidence, screenshots, call logs, some recordings I secretly made. I began to consider sharing those details with her friends or even her family, not for revenge per se, but to make her realize the damage she'd caused. I wanted her to know that actions have consequences, and that I wouldn't be a doormat for her lies anymore. Eventually, I decided I'd confront her one last time, not in the apartment, but in a place where she'd have nowhere to run. I wanted her to see that I was serious about walking away for good. I'd tell her how deeply she'd hurt me, how her lying had destroyed any trust we had, and that I was done playing her game. I didn't want to hurt her, but I wanted her to feel some of the pain she'd inflicted. That was my form of justice, I guess. I also realized I had to focus on healing myself, learning to trust again, learning to love myself after all this shit. Looking back, I know this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about recognizing your worth, standing your ground, and understanding that sometimes the only way to move forward is to cut out the toxic people who poison your life. Emily thought she could lie her way out of this, manipulate me, and keep her secrets hidden forever. But the truth always comes out. And now I'm finally starting to breathe again, better, stronger, and more aware of what I deserve. Since breaking free from her, I've felt a strange mixture of relief and regret, though mostly relief. It's like I finally removed a heavy weight that's been crushing me for months. I'm not gonna lie, it still hurts. Finding out the girl I was about to marry had been screwing around behind my back was a blow I didn't see coming. But over time, I realized something important. I had to rebuild myself. Trusting again, loving again. It's going to take time, but I know I will. What I've learned from all this is that nobody is immune to betrayal. No matter how much you love someone, how much you believe in them, people can surprise you in the worst ways. The key is to recognize your worth early on, set boundaries, and never ignore the small signs of dishonesty. I was blinded by love, but now I see clearer. Trust isn't given blindly anymore. It's earned, and if someone shows you they're untrustworthy, you need to walk away before they ruin you. As for Emily, I hope she gets what's coming to her, though I know that's not my concern anymore. My focus now is on myself. I've started therapy, working on my self-esteem and learning how to forgive myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I've cut all contact with her. I don't need her to validate me or make me feel whole. I'm enough on my own. This entire ordeal has been a brutal lesson in resilience. I've learned that revenge isn't about petty payback, but about reclaiming your dignity and moving forward. I don't wish her ill. I just want to be better, stronger, wiser, and more cautious. I want to build something real with someone who values honesty and loyalty. That's what I deserve, and that's what I'll find someday. So too, anyone out there going through something similar, trust your instincts. Don't ignore the small red flags. And if you find yourself betrayed, remember that you're not alone and you have the power to turn things around. Life goes on. You can rebuild. You can heal. And one day you'll look back and realize that the pain was just a stepping stone to something better. Because no matter how hard it gets, you're stronger than a betrayal. And you deserve a happiness that's real.